Let's get a few laps under our belt. Okay, that lap was no good. We need you to improve on that. Okay, that's the test over, but I'm afraid we didn't get what we needed. We're going to have to run it again. These conditions are only getting worse. Watch out for standing water. Let's speed it up. Our tyre data's no good unless we're doing a representative pace. If we don't get our time delta back into the green, we'll need to rerun the programme. We didn't didn't really get the data we needed on that run. You might want to give it another go.
And with the cars now over the line, let's see our top three again. Norris, Fernando Alonso and George Russell. And if today's practice is anything to go by, we're in for an exceptional weekend of Formula One.
Okay, good job, mate. Really well done. That was a fantastic drive.
With qualifying finished, it's time to remind ourselves once again of our top three: Cooper, Bottas and Max Verstappen. With qualifying wrapped up now, we have our grid lineup for the big race tomorrow. Be sure to join us then for what will no doubt be a fantastic race. So it's all about speed in today's sprint, not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Cooper lines up on pole position, and Valtteri Bottas will line up alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Perez, Charles Leclerc and Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon, Ricciardo, Latifi, Sebastian Vettel and Mick Schumacher, Tsunoda, Gasly, Guan Yu Zhou and Lance Stroll, Albon and Kevin Magnussen fills the last spot on the grid. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out.
After the points finished last race, let's... done. Top job, my friend, top job. I was a bit worried about this one at the start of the weekend, but you've pulled through. Thank you very much.
The standings. Cooper increases their championship lead. Let's move on to the constructors. The lead at the top comes down after a strong weekend from the challenging pack. Meanwhile, good work from Aston Martin this weekend, who pushed themselves further up the order. With the sprint wrapped up, we now have our grid line-up for the big race tomorrow. Be sure to join us then for what will no doubt be a fantastic race. Good afternoon and welcome to Spielberg and to a circuit that in one form or another has held every Austrian Grand Prix in the championship except the very first back in 1964. It was at this race that John Watson lost a bet and his beard when he took Team Penske's only F1 victory in 1976. If anything, the stakes are even higher today, with 25 points available for victory and a crucial advantage in the championship fight. It's a short lap here in Spielberg with just 10 corners, 7 to the right and 3 to the left, making up the total distance of 2.6 miles. And expect to see a lot of cars running wide today, especially through the last corner, as the wet conditions make the cars skittish through the downhill sections. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Cooper lines up on pole position, and Lewis Hamilton completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Bottas, George Russell, and Perez, Leclerc, Norris, Ricciardo, and Fernando Alonso, Latifi, Vettel, Mick Schumacher, and Stroll, Gasly, Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon, they've taken a grid penalty, and Alex Albon. Joe and Kevin Magnussen fills the last spot on the grid. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head down trackside for today's race. Anthony Davidson also joins me in the commentary box today. Let's talk about Cooper. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
It's been a really solid year so far. There have been some incredible standout performances, but what's really impressed me has been the consistency. With this kind of form, I'm expecting another great race today.
fantastic team effort then to secure victory here in the Styrian Alps. Tell me, Ant, how do you think they were able to deliver such an incredible result today?
It's a heroic effort for any driver to race in conditions like these, and seeing them fight their way to the front was very special indeed. They were able to find all the grip, all the good lines, and had the confidence to get on the power to top it all off. That's what pushed them into first place here today.
Ferrari are at it again. An excellent performance at today's Grand Prix, and they're certainly a team that know what they're doing out there. So let's review the updated driver standings. Cooper increases their championship lead. So, Anthony Davidson, who would you rank as your driver of the day?
I have to give it to Cooper. There was a lot going on all down the field, but they were the only one who I really felt maximised their potential.
It's time to check out the constructors' standings. Ferrari continue to extend the gap at the top of the table. Meanwhile, good work from Aston Martin this weekend, who pushed themselves further up the order. It's been an absolutely wild weekend of Formula One action, and I can't wait to see what's next.